Settle in and let the room grow quiet. Tonight we walk soft-lit corridors, turning the pages of a midnight ledger. One by one we'll meet the lives behind the 13 ghosts, gently, patiently, tracing origins, faces, and echoes without hurry. Nothing to fear here, only stories and the comfort of listening. The firstborn son. A child's room sits in permanent twilight, as if the curtains forgot how to open. Tin soldiers wait in formation along a windowsill. A toy drum rests on its side, the sticks crossed like sleeping hands. Here, the air holds the soft dust of afternoons that never end, and at the center of it all is the boy. Small, watchful, and stubbornly still, the weight of a helmet perched above eyes that learn to look past walls. He was a boy who believed rules could keep the world arranged, lines on the carpet for battlefields, boundaries that kept danger outside of play. But rules are fragile things in neighborhoods where bravado is a kind of currency. A duel called by a louder child becomes a story that swells bigger than streets and parents and caution. The toy gun in his hand felt like permission to be brave, and the cardboard armor on his chest felt like a promise. When promises fail, they do so quietly at first, a breath caught, a silence that spreads wider than a room. Now, in the hush he carries with him, the world returns to arrangement. He walks the halls as if they are corridors between toy fortresses. He does not stomp. He shuffles softly, a child's rhythm that refuses to grow up. A paper feather trembles in the draft as he passes. Sometimes the echo of a straw arrow sighs through the air, not cruelly, not to frighten, but the way old lullabies can feel colder with age. He never rushes. He never chases. He waits in doorways with the patience of a boy who once watched dust motes in sunlight and imagined them to be signals. When he appears at the end of a long corridor, small and steady, there is a feeling like remembering a childhood friend's handwriting, faint, looping, and unavoidably tender. His presence is not a threat. It is an insistence that the shapes of games matter, that imaginary lines on the floor should still be honored. If you pause, he will tilt his helmet a fraction, acknowledging your place on one side of the room and his on the other. The toy drum remains quiet beneath his arm, yet you can almost hear its muted heartbeat. In the quiet of his wake, toy soldiers lean a little, as if salute and repose have finally become the same thing. The torso. In the cool place where kitchens remember their work, tiles breathing out yesterday's heat, aprons gone still, there is a rustle like heavy cloth being folded and unfolded beneath the floor. It is not a body that moves exactly, but the echo of one, a shape defined by absence, duty stitched together by purpose where anatomy would have been. The torso is movement and hunger for completion, a man reduced to the simple grammar of labor, chop, stack, carry, without the luxury of an ending. He was once a creature of appetite and deals, a man who measured risk in piled chips and the slight tremor of a dealer's wrist. Luck is a strange weather. When it turns, you discover how quickly rooms empty and how long hallways become. Promises were called in with the soft efficiency of a debt ledger closing for the night. What remained afterward was not a cautionary tale, but a rhythm, the relentless effort to gather what has scattered, to bring order to a mess that keeps returning. Now he slides through the world as a careful ripple, linen that remembers shoulders, a vest that remembers a spine. Where he moves, papers flatten themselves, receipts align, dominoes find right angles. There is no blood in his story now, only the cool, oddly comforting sense that work continues even when the worker cannot. He does not try to speak. He communicates by tidying edges and gentle pressure, nudging chaos back into columns and stacks. When you feel your sleeve brushed by air, when the knife on the counter settles exactly parallel to the board, that is his hand without a hand, his habit without the man. He does not frighten. He reminds. He reminds us of the way we keep moving after losses, how we learn to carry ourselves in parts when the whole is too heavy. His presence has the drowsy cadence of late-night washing up, water running in a low, steady ribbon, plates leaning against plates, a cloth circling a ring until it fades. If you place a coin on the table edge before you sleep, you may wake to find it centered, gleaming like a small moon. He is the house finally winning, but gently, quietly, without triumph, only with balance restored. The Bound Woman. On the far side of an old gymnasium, the banners still cling to rafters like dried leaves. Tape marks cling to the wooden floor, the ghosts of routines and games layered over one another, until the lines become a map of youthful certainty. In that suspended arena of cheers swallowed by time, the bound woman lingers with the grace of a posed photograph. She is the memory of a crown set just so, a ribbon smoothed flat, the smile that knows every flash will love it. Once upon a season, she was chosen again and again. Homecoming, halftime, the glossy spreads that decide who matters in the small republic of adolescence. When a person's value is wrapped tightly around their public shine, attention feels like oxygen and expectation becomes ribbon. Then comes the night when a trophy is promised to two hearts at once, the ribbon pulled in opposite directions until it becomes a knot. The end, when it arrived, was not sharp but embarrassing, the sort of fate that makes neighbors whisper and teachers close doors. The line of her life, once all glittering appointments, made an abrupt corner and then a wall. Now she walks with posture carved out of obligation, shoulders level as a mantelpiece. You might hear the whisper of satin in rooms that haven't seen a dance in years. Her wrists carry the idea of ties. Her throat wears the memory of applause. She does not rattle chains because she doesn't believe she wears them. Instead, she practices stillness the way others practice speeches. She shows you how to hold a pose until the camera finally looks away. Her presence is the hush between chants, that unreal moment when you can hear your own breathing loud and lonely in a crowded gym. She will stand at the far end of a corridor lined with photographs and stare past her own image, as if trying to find a path the frame forgot to include. If you pass close, you may feel your spine straighten, your chin lift, your smile smooth into something polite. She is not jealous of your steps. She's curious if you can keep them when the music changes. When the lights dim, she becomes a slow-turning reflection on a trophy's face. Pretty, distant, asking nothing except that you understand how heavy it is to be looked at all the time. The Withered Lover. Beyond doors that sigh on quiet hinges, in rooms where lamps throw gentle circles on blankets, the Withered Lover moves like a memory you meant to keep. She belongs to the hour when nurses check charts in a hush and families fall asleep in waiting room chairs. Warmth still clings to her even as the world insists on sterility. Her steps are soft as a mother's hand testing a child's fever. Careful, then more careful. Once she was the pulse of a home, mornings shaped by the choreography of lunches, keys, kisses at doorways, nights arranged around stories and the soft collapse of a couch. Love, when it is ordinary and constant, becomes invisible on purpose. Then, in a blare of unfortunate seconds, ordinary shatters, and love learns a different choreography, monitors, schedules, the stubborn work of recovery. There is a dignity in that work that the wide world rarely honors. When the final quiet arrived, it came with the dull courage of someone who has already given everything and has a little more to give. Now she stays where care is needed, drifting along the spine of a house, pausing wherever a head bows. You might find the chair by the window warmed, though no one sat there, or the corner of a quilt folded back just enough to invite a weary body in. She does not startle, she settles. She brings the scent of laundry dried indoors in winter, the faint medicinal sweetness of throat lozenges, the softness of worn bathrobes. Her face is not a tragedy, it is relief. The story of her is not the accident or the ending, it is the continued promise that love, once set in motion, does not stop at doors no one can open anymore. If you speak aloud in an empty room, she will listen as well as anyone ever has. The photographs on the dresser seem brighter when she is near, as if recognizing that to be remembered is to keep participating. She will stand in thresholds and watch over the passage of fevered nights, the breath counting that anxiety teaches us to do. There may be a faint impression beside you on the bed, a second weight that balances your own. In the morning, worries feel organized like folded towels, and exhaustion feels obeyed. Her presence is a quiet blessing tucked into the corners of a home. The lamp that somehow clicks off after you've fallen asleep. The water glass appearing where your hand will reach. If love had a temperature, it would be exactly that gentle warmth your cheek finds on a pillow she has smoothed. To meet her is to remember that grief is only love that needs new manners. She has learned them. Patiently, she teaches them to the house, to the hallways, to the hands that tremble a little less after she has passed. The torn prince. On a moonlit diamond where chalk lines soften into mist, a bat rests near home plate as if waiting for one last pitch. The stands hold their breath. The scoreboard's bulbs glow like sleepy eyes. In that lingering arena of possibility, the torn prince keeps his vigil, posture loose, shoulders ready, the confidence of youth still draped over him like a Letterman jacket that never wore out. Once, the world loved him for the sound of contact, the crisp crack that sent summer nights into orbit. He collected firsts and bests the way others collected ticket stubs, a sequence of bright moments that promised more bright moments, as though success were a straight road with no crossings. Then came the curve no one could track, a night of engines and asphalt, a dare dressed up as invincibility. Metal spoke a hard language, glass taught its glittering lesson. Time folded him in half, and the future that had stretched endlessly ahead became a brief echo, replaying itself in a stadium that only he can enter. Now he moves with a grace that understands both pride and pause. The bat lifts, but never swings. The shoulders coil, then unwind into stillness. He is the eternal warm-up, the breath before action, the hush that gathers when the crowd senses history. Leather creaks faintly. A baseball spins once across the dirt and stops as though advised by a gentle hand. His face carries no anger, only a careful study of what might have been, as if he is reviewing a play frame by frame, looking for the moment a life could have chosen differently. When he passes, scuffed shoes align themselves along a bench. A helmet, its surface dulled by many imagined seasons, settles with the chin guard facing forward, ready, respectful. If you stand at the edge of the infield and listen, You may hear a single practice toss thud into a waiting mitt. Not a warning, not regret, just the rhythm of a promise that still wants to keep itself. He neither demands nor laments. He rehearses. He holds the line between ambition and acceptance with the poise of someone who knows both are true at once. In his presence, courage feels like patience, and winning looks a great deal like standing tall after the game has ended. The Angry Princess. In a tiled room that remembers steam and secrets, mirrors wait like calm lakes, and porcelain glows with the quiet of distant moons. Here, the Angry Princess tends to rituals that never learned how to console. She moves the way water pours from a pitcher, steady, purposeful, without apology. Any sharpness in her name has softened into focus. Anger in her company is not a storm, but a fixed star around which the room rotates. Once she was convinced beauty was a solvable equation. Just one more adjustment, one more careful cut away from a perfect sum. The world stood by with 1,000 opinions and 1,000 unasked-for lights, and in their glare a small dissatisfaction learned to speak in fluent syllables. Tools became confidants. A line erased here, a curve corrected there. Selfhood turned into a project with no finished ribbon to cut. Exhaustion wears a glossy face before it collapses. When the silence arrived, it was simply the moment after the last attempt, the clip of a switch turning off. Now she glides through bathrooms and vanities with the composure of a night nurse tending lamps. Her fingertips trace the edge of a mirror and surfaces cloud, then clear, as though exhaling. She is not here to frighten anyone from reflections. She asks them to be kinder. Scales settle at 0 without being touched. Comb teeth slide through knots as if the hair decided not to resist. Water in a basin goes still immediately, a perfect oval that forgives every ripple. She carries no sermon, only a demonstration that attention can be gentle, that care can choose softness over correction. If a harsh light hums above a sink, it flickers into a warmer tone when she arrives, and faces become narratives rather than inspections. She pauses longest over scars, not to erase them, but to welcome them into the family of features. Her presence turns critique into quiet maintenance, soap folded into a simple lather, a towel pressed to a cheek for comfort rather than proof. If you linger here, you might notice how the room seems to root for you, the mirror holding a patient version of your expression, the glass promising to keep confidences. A metal instrument, left thoughtlessly where it could wound, nudges itself under a cloth. The shower's whisper becomes rain on a distant roof, and breathing finds the slow pace that beds understand. She has learned the difference between perfection and peace, and she offers that difference like a small, warm candle cupped in both hands. The Pilgrimess. Beyond modern corners and painted walls, the house remembers its first bones, rough beams, packed earth, a doorway that once opened to fields and sky. In that older country, the Pilgrimess walks with the measured dignity of someone who learned early that endurance is a language. Her garments rustle like pages being turned. Her gaze is steady and clear, the way a horizon is clear when winter sharpens everything it touches. Once she crossed a vastness with hope, bundled alongside bread. Communities born of hunger for belonging can sometimes sharpen into suspicion, and suspicion once fed grows quick and tall. Blame seeks a shape to pour itself into. It found hers. There is a long history of doors closing behind women who dared to stand calmly in rooms that preferred to tremble. She refused to tremble. The error of the crowd became her lifelong climate. Yet even climates change, seasons pass, the ground eventually gives back what was taken. Now she inhabits thresholds with a pilgrim's practicality. Her hands, if one can call that calming temperature, hands, arrange simple things. A bundle of dried herbs where a draft creeps in, a chair moved closer to the hearth, a latch eased so it will not catch on night air. Floorboards quiet when she crosses them, as if choosing to be hospitable. In her presence, tools regain their purpose. A broom leans at a comfortable angle. The iron pot sits centered over the circle of heat, not by accident, but by understanding. She does not judge, she measures. She weighs a rumor and finds it light. She weighs kindness and finds it worth the carrying. The smell that follows her is not smoke, but the clean line of cold mornings, the sort of air that invites you to set your shoulders and start the day. When she pauses beside a window, frost patterns articulate themselves into ferns and stars, a brief gallery of delicate insistence. If a candle gutters, it steadies. If a door knocks in the wind, it chooses silence. She has the patient authority of a ledger balanced at last. Those who felt out of place feel invited to belong, not by decree, but by the subtle rearrangement of the room's idea of itself. She reminds us that survival is not merely avoiding fire. It is continuing to lay the table after the flames have been tamed. In her company, accusatory voices lose their echo, and the house remembers that the first purpose of walls was shelter. She is the architecture of composure, upright beams, true plumb, a roof that does not brag about keeping the rain out. She came to a strange land once, and now the strange land is grateful she stayed. The dire mother, in a corner of the house where the wallpaper holds tiny blossoms and the floorboards hush themselves, there is a chair whose seat is slightly too high, a teacup small enough to seem like a toy, and a folded shawl that remembers careful hands. The dire mother keeps a neat world, tidy, proportioned, exact, so that even big noises must soften to enter it. She moves with the practical grace of someone who has always known how to navigate a room full of tall furniture and taller opinions. Her steps make a sound like thread slipping cleanly through fabric. Once she lived by resourcefulness and devotion, an expert in turning the world's rough edges into something safe for those she loved. Work was steady, and so was the gaze she leveled at any threat to her small sovereignty. People elsewhere might have called her life unusual. She called it ordinary, because love, routine, and the comfort of familiar tasks are ordinary, and that is the glory of them. She raised a child the way careful people tend a garden, staking where needed, sheltering from wind, praising every leaf that insisted on growing. Suspicion and spectacle often travel together, and strangers are too quick to decide what a family should look like. But her household did not ask permission to exist. It simply existed, with a firmness that makes unkindness feel clumsy. One day, noise flooded the quiet rooms like an unexpected storm. When storms arrive, a mother's first instinct is to gather what matters and hold fast. She did. Even now, she continues that gesture, gathering, holding, arranging, making a circle of safety no matter what weather the world invents. She is small only to those who measure by height. By other measures, focus, patience, resolve, she is immense. When she passes through a space, messes diminish without drama. Buttons line up, pins return to their cushion. A fallen petal finds a vase instead of the floor. There is a fragrance of starch and lavender, the domestic magic that makes sheets crisp and evenings comfortable. Her presence encourages good manners in objects. Drawers close fully, lids click true. The rocking chair chooses to be still. If you sit and breathe, you may feel your worries folded the way she folds linens, corners matched, edges smoothed, the last air pressed out with a kind palm. She does not scold. She instructs by demonstration, the quiet authority of someone who keeps promises no one else thought to make. To meet her is to learn a secret of endurance, that sanctuary can be stitched together, piece by piece, by hands that never stop caring. The Great Child. Across the hall from Measured Things is a room that loves abundance. Cushions relax into welcoming shapes, blankets pile like friendly clouds. A mobile of stars turns slowly, whether or not a breeze remembers to visit. In this gentle country, the Great Child lingers with the gravity that is also a softness. He is large in the way trees are large, present, sheltering, less interested in what moves quickly than in what feels right. His eyes carry the uncomplicated trust of someone who has been taught, faithfully, that home is where kindness lives. Once he learned the world through caretaking hands, meals at the same hour, stories that knew when to end, a voice that could turn thunder into a lullaby by simply standing beside it. He grew according to a rhythm that prioritized safety over speed and meaning over measurements. Outsiders misunderstand such rhythms. They tap their watches at them and miss the music. When the quiet in his home abruptly frayed, when the hallway filled with strangers and confusion, he did what he had always done. He looked for his anchor. Searching became his whole weather. Now he moves with careful curiosity, a steady tide that shifts toys away from sharp corners and sets chairs back on 4 feet. He hums under his breath, not a tune exactly, but the sound of contentment being rebuilt. The floor seems to soften beneath him. He is attentive to simple troubles, a door that sticks, a blanket that slipped, a pillow without its partner. If a night light brightens unexpectedly, it is because he better remembers the dark. He is strong the way comfort is strong, not by force, but by refusing to vanish. People sometimes imagine that he is only his size. He is also listening. He hears when you speak kindly, especially to yourself. He hears when you decide not to hurry. He hears gratitude, even the small kind we say silently to a cup of warm cocoa or to a cat settling in our lap. Stand near him and your breathing falls into an easier pattern, like waves that have agreed on a shore. He does not want much, only that the softness he understands so well remains available to whoever needs it. When he leaves a room, the blankets sigh, the stars turn once more, and the promise of gentleness lingers like the last line of a lullaby. The hammer. Farther along, where the house remembers labor, workbench scuffed by faithful hands, nails sleeping in small tin coffins, iron tools patient as winter, the hammer keeps watch. He is the geometry of fairness made flesh, square shoulders, level gaze, the equilibrium of a plumb line finding true. The air around him carries the deep, almost musical scent of green wood, split cleanly, of coal that has learned to glow without racing into flame. Once he was a craftsman whose word weighed what metal weighs, exact, dependable, without ornament. In those days, a good reputation traveled slower than gossip, but it traveled farther. When falsehood was fastened to his name, it arrived like a badly forged hinge, loud, ill-fitting, ready to fail. He stood as men stand who know their own workmanship, and still the town's fear found purchase where truth should have held. The end of that chapter came with the dull finality of heavy boots on boards. Yet, endings are peculiar things. Sometimes they temper rather than break, and the man who emerged from that heat was quieter, stronger, and uninterested in revenge. Now his presence mends what is crooked and dignifies what is plain. A warped door rights itself on its pins. A picture, long hung slightly askew, settles into perfect balance with a small, contented click. Squeaks move out of hinges as if persuaded by reason. He does not punish, he corrects. He is the dignity of tools used well, of mornings begun early without complaint, of wages earned by making sure a thing does what it was meant to do. He carries the kindness of a bench offered to a tired back, and the justice of a beam that refuses to sag over a table where a family meets. Stand near his work and the room becomes accurate. Not harsh, accurate. Promises you've made to yourself feel reachable when measured against his steady calm. He understands the language of weight and balance, and he lends that fluency to the heart. Anger loses its heat in his company, cooling into clarity. Sorrow finds something to lean on and becomes bearable. If you have a burden, he will not lift it for you. He will show you how to shoulder it in a way that spares the spine. Sometimes, long after midnight, a gentle tapping sounds, not the rage of someone trying to get in, but the patient rhythm of repairs continuing. One nail, then another, each set flush, each chosen with care. In the morning, the house does not look new, it looks right. And in that rightness lives a peace he forged from the oldest materials he knows. Courage, fairness, and the quiet strength of work done honestly. The Jackal. In the deepest hall of the house, where the air keeps a cool library hush, clawed shadows scroll along the walls like script written by wind. Here the Jackal moves, not as a pounce, but as a pattern. Chains murmur softly as if practicing manners. A wire cage gleams dully, not threatening so much as ceremonial, like an old helm that remembers storms yet chooses calm seas tonight. Once he lived on the restless edge of things. Doorways, alleys, the thinnest slices of night where rules blur and fear teaches quicker than school. Strangers named him more than they knew him, and their names tightened like knots. When a place of order took him in, it offered routines and restraints. The human attempt to persuade whether to stay inside a jar. Years passed in the careful arithmetic of corridors and keys. In that long accounting, a person can become only the remainder. But even remainders tell us something true. Now he is the shape of uneasy energy, learning gentleness. The scrape you hear is not a threat. It is restlessness finding a rhythm that won't disturb sleepers. He circles the way wind circles a cup left on a windowsill, curious, testing, then satisfied. If you meet him at the end of a corridor, he will keep his distance, head tilted as if listening for an instruction more subtle than words. The cage he wears is not a weapon. It is a reminder to him and to the room that fierce things can choose soft paths. Around him, wildness tidies itself. Curtains that might have snapped settle into a steady sway. A draft that once whistled becomes a low, even breath. Nails, long and impatient, tap until they discover a pace that feels like a heartbeat falling asleep. He has the look of someone always ready to bolt, and the grace of someone who has decided not to. In his company, we remember that agitation is only the first verse of a longer song, and that the next verses can be calmer, kinder, if given time. If fear rises in you, he notices first. His shoulders ease, the air turns companionable. The cage catches the light and scatters it into small, safe stars. He is not here to test your courage. He is here to keep the more sudden weather outside. If he leaves a mark, it is a series of soft scratches on the floor near the threshold, a boundary drawn for your comfort as much as his. The Jackal is the lesson that restraint, when chosen, can be its own sort of freedom, and that even the loudest parts of us can learn to whisper. The Juggernaut. Where the house remembers heavy work, a broad door once used for deliveries, beams that know how to bear weight, a smell of cold iron, the Juggernaut abides. He is large the way locomotives are large, not to intimidate, but to carry. The air near him has a depth to it, a bass note like distant thunder that never breaks into a storm. When he moves, it is a thoughtful shift, a deliberate granting of right-of-way to smaller things. Once, he walked a rough road that mistook size for destiny. Doors widened because of him, voices rose because of him. Troubles, eager for a strong back, leapt onto his shoulders. In such places, kindness often arrives late and leaves early. He learned to speak rarely and to listen to the language that weight speaks, the practical poetry of loads and levers, of balance found in the middle of strain. Then, one day, too many demands converged at once, and the world around him thinned into a single, brittle line. Lines like that do not hold. When they snapped, they left him standing in a silence that felt both deserved and unfair. Now he offers steadiness the way a bridge offers passage, without comment, with confidence. The floor does not tremble under him. It settles. Shelves steadied by his nearness stop their furtive wobble, as if grateful to be taken seriously. A stubborn door yields not by force, but as though persuaded by his patience. If a burden must be moved, from a heart, from a table, from a memory, he does not take it away. He stands beside it until you realize it can be shared. He understands corners and edges, and he is gentle with them. Boxes stacked too high find a safer arrangement while he is in the room. The rattle of loose bolts resolves into a tidy tin with a lid that fits. His hands, invisible yet undeniable, are the kind that turn a wrench only as far as needed, never further. There is no hurry in him. Even his silence feels constructive, like a wall that holds up not only a roof, but a promise. Stand close and your posture changes without instruction. The spine learns what true feels like. The breath chooses a longer route in and out. Regret, a weight that fidgets, sits still for once and listens for instructions. He carries no grudge. He carries capacity. If the night is long, he does not shorten it. He makes it bearable. In the morning, you may find a path cleared where clutter used to be, as if the room itself had decided to be on your side. That is his signature. Not a dent, not a scar, but space. The broken heart. In the center of the house, where stairways meet like open hands, where railings shine from the touch of many days, there is a warmth best described as a vow kept. The broken heart dwells here, not as a wound, but as a lantern. Light gathers around them with the softness of candlelight behind frosted glass. Whether you picture this presence as a figure or as a feeling hardly matters. Both are true. What moves through the center is love that has learned new physics. Once there was a family and its orbit, mornings with their quiet logistics, evenings stitched with talk, the small ceremonies that make a place feel like forever. When danger tried to reset the clock, someone stepped toward it, not to disappear, but to protect. That gesture, made without calculation, change the room in a way that did not end. Love, when it reaches a certain temperature, does not vanish with its vessel. It condenses on everything it pledged to guard. Now the broken heart is not sorrow in echo, it is care at scale. When laughter drifts from a distant room, it arrives here a little clearer, as if approved. When tears are shed in a quiet corner, the space between sobs grows, the breath returning like a tide that remembers where home is. Hinges do not squeal in this company. They understand they are part of a sanctuary and act accordingly. The ticking of clocks syncs with the resting human pulse. Even dust motes organize themselves into slow constellations in the shafts of light, as if to remind the air that it, too, can be tender. This presence has no face because it has all the faces of those it shelters. It does not argue with machines or fate. It simply outlasts them with gentleness. Photographs seem brighter at their edges, as if illuminated from the inside out. A dropped plate might wobble on the floor and, improbably, not break. Words spoken here take their time and land softly. It's not magic in the way stories usually mean magic. It is the reliable grace of care choosing, again and again, to stay. If you pause on the landing and put your palm flat to the banister, you may feel the faintest warmth, as though love had circulation and you had reached a wrist. Wishes become simpler in this center point, for safety, for sleep that forgives the day, for those we carry in our minds to feel carried in theirs. The broken heart listens and dispenses the quiet courage to believe that endings are only one way of naming transformations. When this presence moves, it moves outward, into kitchens where late-night cups of water wait, into bedrooms where blankets need one more tug, into doorways where goodbyes require a steadier tone. It does not ask for recognition. It does not need rescue. It is the rescue, arriving as atmosphere rather than shout. The other ghosts, when they pass through, seem to stand a little taller, to prefer stillness, to remember their best manners. The house itself aligns to the promise this presence keeps, that love, once given fully, turns a place into a keeper of its own.